We're going to break and rebuild the myth in this video that as a PA, NP, or pharmacist, it is totally possible to become a multimillionaire on a six-figure income. I'm Kristen Burton. I'm a critical care PA, and I crossed the first millionaire mark in terms of net worth at 31 when my husband was 32. We did this not by just using 401ks or just using Roth IRAs, but by leveraging strategies to build wealth aggressively and early, which I'm going to show you now. You have to understand that the only way for you to build wealth is to generate income-producing assets. Now, that can be done in a lot of different ways, and we'll talk about several, but the easy thing to do to get started is to invest in the stock bond market. Now, we didn't become millionaires overnight, right? This was in 2021. Years before we would hit millionaire status, we're actively and aggressively investing in every single dang account that we had available to us, right? This is us buying short-term rentals and investing in private equity syndications into large multifamily properties so that we could generate the income-producing assets that we would need to create that aggressive early wealth building plan that we were after. So before you go, okay, I want to become an early wealth builder, you have to first go, well, what's it take to just retire? Because most people don't know that part. What does it actually take to create a basic retirement at 65, 67? Well, the standard safe withdrawal rate of 4% dictates this. If you retire at 65, $1 million invested creates $40,000 a year to live off of. That's not very much money, right? Especially if you spend 2 minutes talking to your grandparents and go, hey, how much did gas used to cost? How much did milk used to cost, right? How they're like, oh, I paid for my whole undergrad with $200, and you're going, well, mine cost $200,000. The same thing will happen to you. $40,000 will not buy, when you're 65, what it buys you now. Here are the real numbers behind the inflation adjustment. Most people forget this when planning their retirement numbers. So if you're 35, you earn $120K, your annual expenses are $70,000. If you try to figure out what you need to retire and you ignore inflation, you land at 1.75. Right? You might even think for a second, I don't have to become a multimillionaire, but you would be wrong. Because once you add in that 2.5% inflation rate every single year from now until you're 65, the number actually balloons up to 3.67. And so in this situation, forgetting your inflation adjustment is a $2 million mistake. If you want to be an early retiree, the math actually breaks down even beyond that, and your safe withdrawal rate changes, which translates to you actually get less money per year from that same $1 million. It depends on the data that you look at, but it may be closer to $30,000 to $35,000 per year from $1 million invested. So you can start by shattering the idea that you will never become a multimillionaire and breaking it into a million pieces, because truth is you actually have to become a multimillionaire just in order to have a standard retirement. So what does it look like to get there, right? Well, first off, the number one driving factor of you building wealth is your investing rate. If you look back at what you've been doing with money and you've been investing 5%, 7%, 10% of your income, I'm proud of you for getting started. But reality says you will not be able to retire at 65. And as a matter of fact, those dreams you have of reducing hours, going part-time, taking that lower paying job because there's no weekends and no call, it's going to be really difficult to bring that to fruition. So let's talk about ways to actually do it, right? This is a real message I got from a client inside our Millionaires in Medicine program, and her spouse had this big idea of how they wanted things to go, right? And it's not uncommon from what most people want. When they had kids of a certain age, they wanted to be able to work less. They also wanted to still be able to retire early so they could travel and have more time to do things together while they were healthy. This, the idea of both people reducing hours at one point, one person reducing hours at some point, still retiring early, can feel like a pie-in-the-sky goal. Now, we actually executed a plan with them to create this exact scenario for them, and they're living this out. But it takes a lot of intentionality and strategy to make something like this come to fruition. Part of what we use to get them there is a strategy called Coast Fire. So let me explain it. It is a situation where your investments will grow to what you need it to grow to by the time you're 65 with you not adding anything else. This is an investing calculator that I built that we use internally to help figure out if people are on track. So I'll explain it to you. Top number, gross income. Second number is current balance invested. This third number is your age, or the oldest of the spouses. This is what you're going to contribute moving forward to investments, okay? Doesn't count high yield savings accounts or anything like that. Second number from the bottom is your inflation adjusted goal to retire at 65. This includes that 2.5% annual inflation rate. And you can see that this person at 30 with their current investment portfolio of $450,000 never has to invest again past 30 years old. And they'll be able to retire with abundance. So that means they can do a million things, right? They can relax, vacation, travel, focus on health, volunteer more, stay home with kids. They can work a lot less because they've achieved this investment milestone. Again, it means you can reduce hours or take a lower paying job. It doesn't mean you can stop working and live off of your assets yet, but it does mean you don't have to earn as much because you don't have to keep contributing. So let me show you how a 28-year-old making $130K a year, spending $4,900 per month can do this by 40. So $60K in annual expenses, we inflation adjust them and we realize the person needs $3.74 million at 65 to retire. So if they hit $555,000 by 40, they would never invest again. Their investments would create what they needed. This is coast fire, right? This is the goal. How do they do this? Well, it takes an annual investment of $28,000 over 12 years to do it. Now, you might look at that and go, okay, well, I'll just max out my 401k, right? At $23,500, that gets me pretty close. You would be wrong. In order to be a successful early retiree, you need tax diversification, you need tax-deferred money, you need after-tax money, and you need tax-free money. And so creating a tax-diversified portfolio is part of being a true savvy investor and having the potential to be an early retiree. If you wait, you lose these types of opportunities. It's very difficult to create a coast fire situation where you can reduce hours early, or even a full-blown early retirement if you're not aggressively investing until you're way later in the game. You get to a point where mathematically you're actually playing catch up just to create a basic standard retirement at 65. So if you want to do these things, if you want to say, hey, I want the option to reduce hours, to take the lower paying job, to take a sabbatical, to retire early, you have no time to waste. You've seen the numbers. Becoming a multimillionaire isn't the goal, it is a must. And unless you get started today, it becomes very difficult to make that happen.